Welcome to episode 2 of Locked In with Ramsey with our guest Bohan.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks for coming on the show, Bohan.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I wanted to introduce Bohan a little bit because he's a very interesting guy. So I'm actually going to start with a little story that for a very, very long time, I've had very different from the normal views on what marriage is. And I say I don't really believe in marriage, but like I'm open to the idea of it. I'm not settled on how I feel about marriage. And for many, many years I've been discussing the idea of marriage with a lot of different people. And a lot of people just gave me kind of like normal takes. And they're like, yeah, no, marriage is great. You should get married. I'm like, that's not... I was just talking for 10 minutes about marriage, man. Like, that's not an answer, okay? And then I told Bohan, I like gave him my 10-minute spiel about marriage. And he had a new take. And this is probably like 8 or 9 years into my weird take on marriage. And Bohan gave me a new take. So I'm like, I need to hear more about this, Bohan. So I want to hear your take on marriage. Specifically, to me, it's like, so I don't believe in the idea of till death do us part. To me, that doesn't compute. But it seems like that's typically what people do with marriage. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you're like, I don't know exactly if you're like, oh, we should, yeah, till death do us part is great, or like but I feel like there's some nuance there that I want to hear.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm married, right? So,
you are married, yes. Yeah, I guess that's an important context
Yeah.
for the listener, that Bohan is married.
Yes.
And he's happily married.
I'm happily married, yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just kind of a nice situation. You know, it's good, so why not? Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't I want this to continue as long as possible, right? And I find that, you know, I guess the commitment of marriage is...
Yeah.
Part of it, right? There's knowing that, you know, somebody's gonna have your back, and, you know, I have their back, and, you know, I think that's part of the nice thing about it.
But like, I'm not gonna sign up for something for the rest of my life just because it's kind of nice.
I see. So like, I guess was it just that like you're worried that you're gonna change your mind in the future?
Yeah, I think I don't trust like future me to like I don't trust myself to make the right decision for him.
Okay.
And for him to not change his mind and to like know myself and the world that well.
Right. Yeah. So I guess before I got married or, you know, started, I guess, really seriously dating my now wife, I guess I probably had a similar idea of this, where it was like, oh, you know, it doesn't matter that much about marriage. It's like, oh, I'm probably gonna be with him, you know, and, you know, why not just like live with them or, you know, cohabit or, you know, do common law marriage, right? Or whatever. You know, why go through the whole commitment thing? But yeah, I guess I'm an economist, so like I will say that, you know, I did my grad studies in economics, and, you know, I think economists have kind of a funny way to see marriage, which, you know, I think you kind of found pretty funny, right?
I did. I don't remember the full details, but I'd like to hear the economist's take.
Yeah. So
on marriage.
So in economics, marriage is about it's basically income insurance, right? So if you're on your own, right, and you like have a bad shock, you get unlucky, right? You lose your job, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Right. But if there's two of you, you're less likely to lose your job together.
Yeah, that's
right. Yeah, okay. So it's kind of like insurance, right?
Yeah. So that's why you got married.
So no. So it's
I
got married because of love. But love is the error term. Okay, that's the unmeasurable stuff. So that's the error term. So in the model, right? But I mean, there's some other reasons to get married. Like there's consumption efficiencies. Like you can consume more stuff because you know it's more efficient. To consume, you know, you can like rent an apartment together, and that's better than renting a studio by yourself, right?
That's true, but you can do that without getting married.
That's true, yeah.
Right?
But I think
it's about like marriage specifically. Like I think a lot of the things attached to marriage.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could see myself doing that, like moving in with somebody.
Yeah.
Right, but like marriage specifically is what I'm like. why did you do that? And
Right.
you seem to enjoy it. You seem to think it's good.
Yeah. Well, okay. So on the income insurance point,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of, it starts getting into why marriage is important, right? Or why it's useful. Like the idea is that if you just could pull out of marriage whenever you wanted to,
Yeah.
right? Then it's very bad income insurance.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then somebody loses their job and then, you guys split.
True.
And it's like, oh, I'm not going to like, lose some of my income to like help you out. Right? You got unlucky. I'm not, so, then it kind of doesn't work. Right? So the whole point of marriage is that it creates this commitment cost.
Yeah.
Right? Where if you try to get a divorce, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Right? So the whole point is to make splitting off very expensive.
Very inconvenient.
So yeah, very inconvenient.
Yeah.
And then you so that then the income insurance could actually work. Right? Now, this is like a bit stylized, right? Obviously we don't get married because of income insurance.
Oh, that's what I was.
Right. yeah, no, we don't.
I was like, what a fascinating relationship.
Yeah, no, but I think the idea is just that like you're there for each other. Right? And so if one of you is going through a hard time, or if you're like both going through a hard time, right, you're gonna like, because it's so hard to like split, right, you're gonna stick together and you're gonna work through it together, and you kind of have like a teammate who is gonna be there for you, right? Now obviously if it gets super bad, or there's something wrong with the relationship or something like that, then you pay the cost, and that's gonna be more inconvenient for you. But the whole idea of marriage is that you commit future Ramsey
Yes.
to like not make certain decisions. And
Yeah.
that commitment can actually make you better off.
See, I think that's where I struggle,
Yeah.
is with the committing future Ramsey to things, especially like committing Ramsey from 50 years from now to things. Right? Like I'm committing Ramsey for the rest of eternity to something. And I'm like, I don't want to do that to him. Like, I don't.
What if you make a mistake? Or like,
Not
what if
even. I think it's not even about like making a mistake. Like maybe in the moment I made like what felt like the right choice, right? And like based on the available information, it was the right choice. But like, what if the information I have is like severely lacking and I don't really know what I'm doing?
Right.
Right. And like I think like it's like, how can you know what you're doing enough to commit yourself to something for the rest of your life? How can you have enough information to make that call?
Yeah. That is a tough question. And I think one of the things I said to you back then, and, to kind of the answer to that is that you kind of don't, but, in some ways when you're making this decision, it's not just about, what you currently are or what you think about where you might be, but also you're kind of making a choice about where you want to go. Right. So when you make this commitment to marry someone, right, you're not just, hoping by blind chance that you're in 50 years from now, you're going to be okay with marriage, right? Or being married to that person.
Yeah.
Right. You're probably over time going to make decisions that try to, improve the marriage and strengthen the marriage and strengthen your relationship with that person. Right. So, this was something else I've heard where it's like, well, sometimes when you have a tough decision to make in life, it's like, it's kind of like, it's about, more about who you want to become rather than like who you are. Right. It's like, you're kind of at a crossroads and both could potentially be good, but it's like, you're going to be a different person at the end of it. So that's, something I read that seemed to kind of resonate with me, and I think it might be applicable here as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And like, I just want to think about that for a second, but because I think this is something I have been thinking about more in my life these days, is that like, I think I've seen a lot of like productivity influencers talking about this kind of thing, that like what you're doing during the day influences who you're going to be in the future. Right? So like I've started meditating recently, and part of the point of meditating is that when you meditate more, you will get better at meditating. Like you're going to change your brain in a way that it is different in the future, and you're making the choice now.
Right.
And like for marriage, I guess you're kind of saying a similar thing. It's like if you choose to get married to this person and you choose to spend a lot of time with them and you choose to work on your relationship with them, then in the future you will want them more.
Yeah.
I guess.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because you're making the choice now that in the future I'm going to want this person more. So I'm going to take action now to change future me.
Yeah.
To work better for
Absolutely.
the scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that makes sense. And I think something else that helps too is like, sometimes we'll have disagreements, right?
Yeah.
And I think in the context of a marriage, when you have like a productive argument, right, it could be something that strengthens the marriage because you know that you're still going to be committed to each other. And so now you're kind of trying to work something out, and you're kind of, you kind of approach these things with, a different intention or a different, context, right? Whereas I mean, it's hard for me to know, right? But I would imagine that in maybe some sort of like less committed situation, if there's a disagreement, there's always the, in the background, like, oh, is this, are we suited for each other, right? Should we just like split up? Is this like, is this something where, we're not gonna, we're just gonna like, leave if we're not as, super happy with each other or those things. Whereas, you're kind of stuck with it, right? If you have a marriage, right? So you're kind of more, and so you kind of like, I guess it kind of starts being approached in a different way, right? Which I find kind of nice.
I guess like for me, what I've been doing and what I like the in my current relationship, the deal we have is that we're gonna work on it together, right? So that and to me, I guess it like solves that problem without committing ourselves to being together necessarily. Is that we're committing to solve the problem together and to like not abandon the problem.
Yeah, I guess
I don't know if that makes sense, but and then I'm not committing future Ramsey to anything other than solving this problem, right? But like solving a problem in the relationship, which could in the future lead to like the relationship breaking up. Maybe that is the solution to the problem, but the commitment is that we're going to solve it together. And I guess I've been like satisfied with that.
Okay.
Right? So like in terms of that part of the marriage, I'm like, yeah, like I already got that down.
Right.
But
well, what does your partner think? Does is this like
that's another story.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I would say a part of it was because my wife wanted it, right? And that was, I think, part of the reason I did it. And I think it's worked out in a positive way, right? But I think it's true. I think I think I would have had a lot of the same thoughts before, right? And it's not like I masterminded that. Oh, these are all the benefits of marriage beforehand. It's just things that I kind of noticed. That's kind of nice. And of course, I think some of them do make logical sense. So
yeah.
But do you think that this lack of commitment? Are you finding that it's like? Do you have those thoughts where it's like, oh shoot, like, we could just, we had this disagreement and like, it's something that is really scary and, we could break up over this or, is that something that like affects how you behave or?
Yeah. Like, a little bit, but like, it's not, I'm trying to think about it because it's the way I think the way that comes up is kind of nuanced for me, and that like I think I have those feelings sometimes, but I don't think it's like, I think it's much more of an emotional reaction than anything to do with like what's actually happening. It's just that I have very strong negative feelings in the moment, and that's why that comes up. That like, oh, we shouldn't be together. It's not really anything to do with the actual situation, I guess. And once I like deal with those feelings a bit, then I'm like, no, actually, that was purely an emotional reaction. I feel like I have more to say on that. But...
Do you think that would be more of a problem if you had more self-control? Like, because it sounds like you have like really good like self-control and self-awareness, right?
Thank you.
You know, it's like you meditate, right?
Yeah.
You seem to like, right? But do you think for like the average person, that might be an issue? And they might need that
I
extra
think the
step.
average person should be more like me, but
Okay.
I think that would be good for them.
Uh-huh.
But and we got a whole nother story here.
Okay, right.
I guess okay. Let me tie it back into something that's been sitting in the back of my mind during a lot of this conversation. Is that
Right.
so? I think these days, I am very aligned with like Taoism in general,
Okay.
and Taoism is very much about like don't have expectations and be in the moment, right? And so to me, the commitment is very much like the opposite of that philosophy. So you're saying that actually you can't expect me to be in your life, and I can't expect you to be in my life, right? You're setting up that like yes, there's an expectation that we're going to be together in the future, and I think it's not even just that I don't trust myself, but I don't trust like existence to like let myself feel that comfortable.
Okay.
And so when I looked up Taoist marriage, I'm like, what do they do? And what they commit to is because a lot of Taoism is about harmony and like being in the moment and finding harmony in the moment. And so the Taoist marriage commitment, at least as I understand, or at least AI told me this. I don't know how reliable it is. I couldn't find too much on English internet, unfortunately.
Okay.
But the way I understood it is the commitment is to harmony in the relationship.
Okay.
So you're committing to like working on the relationship together and for there to be harmony there. Right? Because it's like Taoism is about like the yin and yang and balance in the yin and yang, harmony in the yin and yang. And so to me, that makes more sense to me. And like I don't know. It's not a direct response to anything you said. I just wanted to like put these thoughts out there because it is closely related. And
I mean, I kind of feel you on that because I used to be like, oh yeah, the key to happiness is low expectations.
yeah.
Right? That was something I used to say quite a bit.
Yeah. You used to say. Why don't you say that anymore?
I guess less opportunities. I don't know. It's but yeah, I think I get your point. Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and I think that's something I would have certainly identified with.
Because to me, that is the key to happiness so far. Is like low expectations and then like being grateful for what you already have.
I guess one thing is that, coming back from like a slightly economics perspective, is that, oftentimes being able to make investments in stuff is good, right?
Yeah.
Like, in the economy, if you're a business or something, like being able to make investments is good.
Yeah.
Similarly, in a relationship, right, you can make, there are ways to make investments, not necessarily financially, right, but in the sort of like a metaphorical sense, right?
Or like you spend time.
Yeah, spend time
like
together.
or like you spend time like discussing an argument. Maybe it takes you a few hours, but now like you've resolved something
Exactly.
that you won't have to deal with in the future.
Yeah, or just you figure out ways to, enjoy each other's company and and so, maybe if you didn't have that commitment, right, you might not be as willing to make or feel as comfortable making those investments. Right, and I guess the business analogy would be like if it's like a really uncertain time or something like that. If it's a very risky investment, then the payoff has to be really really good, right, before you might want to do it, right. Whereas if there's some sort of safety net in terms of that or some sort of commitment that it's not going to just go to waste, right, then it might be a lot easier to make that investment, right. So that's kind of how I see that, where it can make it easier to. For the relationship to build up, a lot faster, right? And so I think it's a matter that, it doesn't necessarily, it's not just like limiting what you can do, but in some ways it expands what you can do, right? And it's kind of paradoxical.
Yeah.
But it's actually a pretty well-known finding that sometimes being able to enter commitments is actually, can actually expand the amount of possibilities that you can have.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, so there's actually a really like nerdy example.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the nerdiest example. The nerdiest example is that So we're talking about federal banks and monetary policy.
Okay.
Okay, so this is very, very nerdy. So let's suppose that in the short run, if the central bank lowers interest rates, they can boost the economy. Okay, so but then by lowering interest rates, they're kind of printing some money, right? So they increase the inflation.
Okay.
Right. So maybe during a recession when inflation is very, very low and, we need, and, unemployment is high, then, that might be a good time for the central bank to lower interest rates and, give a boost to the economy.
Okay.
Right. But you can also think that maybe if it's a normal time or if it's a good time, there's also some temptation to maybe like lower rates a little bit to have a slightly better economy, right? Like maybe not as much as during a recession, but at some marginal level, maybe there's that temptation, right? Okay, but then the problem is these interest rates are operating, they are only effective if they're kind of surprises, right? Or having a little extra inflation, that's only effective at boosting the economy if it's, if businesses and people haven't already kind of like planned for it, right? So if we know that inflation is going to be like high, a year from now, then we're gonna build that into our contracts. We're gonna go to our boss and say, okay, I'm gonna expect this type of raise every year because inflation is gonna be this, right? Your companies, when they make these long-term contracts with other businesses, they're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna sell you this product for this today, but next year I'm gonna raise the prices by that much, right? So if this gets overdone, then it's not effective anymore. Right, and we see that with certain like countries where they have runaway inflation, right?
I don't know if the analogy is going to help me, but
so if the central bank cannot commit, right, they're always going to have that temptation, right? That they're going to kind of be tempted to lower interest rates a little bit to juice the economy, even in good times. And once that becomes the expectation and everybody knows it, then you're just going to have a higher level of inflation without the benefit of boosting the economy. Okay. So what's really good for central banks is the ability to commit, to say that we're going to be committing to an inflation target, and we're going to, not tolerate inflation, that are different from, let's say, 2 or 3% for very long, right? Maybe we'll sometimes stray away from that if the economy is really bad, but for the most part, we are committed to a 2 or 3% inflation target. And, in good times, we're not going to be tempted. And even in bad times, we're going to be careful, right? Then we can have lower levels of inflation and monetary policy can work, right? So it's only because of a commitment that central banks are as effective as they are in creating, low inflation environments and, they can still kind of adjust for recessions or bad times, right? So it's actually kind of well known that, with commitment, you can actually improve your potential. So it's
I think I got the comparison, but I don't know how many listeners.
I told you it's very nerdy. I told you it's very nerdy.
Yeah, it was more nerdy. I think it was more nerdy than I expected, but it's as nerdy as I should have expected. You.
Yeah.
So, let's go back to marriage because I think that might make a little more.
Yeah.
So I think the point though is that like there's a benefit to you to being in a committed relationship versus an uncommitted relationship.
Right.
Like the average committed relationship will be better because it has some benefits to it.
Exactly.
Compared to an uncommitted, even if everything else is exactly the same.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There's like a benefit to being in a committed relationship.
Yes.
Which is, I guess, like it could be the idea like if I know they're not going to leave me, here's an example maybe. It's like if I know that they're not going to leave me because I'm broke, then I might be more willing to like quit my job and get a new job that maybe doesn't pay as less but is better for me, or maybe like or maybe start a business and then like in the long term it'll pay better, right? Because it takes off, but I can only do that because I know that that this person's not going to leave me just because I'm broke.
Exactly.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But I feel like that's not. I don't know if that's enough to get married for me.
I mean, you're gonna have to decide for yourself, right? Like everybody's gonna be different, and there's I think a lot of reasons, but everybody's gonna have to figure that out, and I guess with their partners as well, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Plus, I think, I don't know, it's just kind of nice to, say that I'm married. I don't know that, or that I have a wife. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just kind of, in terms of, I guess the level of affection I have towards her and, she
Yeah.
towards me and those things. I think it's been a positive for that. I don't know.
Like, I feel like there is a positive to knowing that. I feel like there's an emotional positive for me of knowing that this person won't leave me. But I feel like, to me, it's like it's a false comfort.
Is
Like,
it?
maybe I don't know what's gonna happen.
Well, I think. Well,
Like, I think in the scenario where you are married, you have to treat it as a real. You have to trust the other person, and you have to treat it as a real comfort because, or else there's no point of doing it if you're just not gonna trust them. But, like I trust their intentions, but I don't trust the complexity of the universe
right. Well, I mean,
to deliver.
isn't that kind of like a nice safety net though, that if things get really bad somehow, that like it's not, it's not a 100% firm commitment, right? You're not like, there's no like law of the universe that you have to stay together.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So
So I don't. It's
isn't
like
that
it's
still
like
like a nice fail safe, right? So like, obviously you're not entering into like, something that's like so bad that if one of you has like a radical personality shift or whatever, then in suddenly you're super incompatible that you still have to stay together,
yeah.
right?
But isn't that what you're agreeing to?
No, what I'm just saying is that it's like maybe the downside risk isn't so bad, right? That yeah, maybe you commit yourself in the future that to something that maybe is not super well suited for you.
Yeah.
But if it becomes like massively unsuitable, right, then it's not that much worse, right?
But yeah, I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, you always can just leave.
Yeah, like
You can just get divorced.
right. Obviously, it'd be more
But-
costly in a lot of ways, right?
But you can't. It's there. It's not impossible. But to me, the problem with that is that then I'm not really committing to it.
No, you are.
If I'm thinking about, like, oh, there's like outs to the marriage, then like, am I really married? If I'm like, we're getting married, but like, here's a list of outs. Like, if this happens, like, I'm out though.
Well, I don't think it's that explicit, right? I think it's more that. I mean, there's like a certain. I guess there's a like. There's only so much you can commit, right? Like you can't like, right? Every commitment involves some sort of like exit clause, right? Like
Yeah.
there is no law in the universe where you sign and suddenly they're like we don't have like mental like magic that it's like some compulsion on you, right?
But I think like but I feel like the words that you're speaking when you get married are often like put in that way, and right, and there's a like, especially because like most marriages have some kind of religion in them, like it is almost like we treat it as a magical like compulsion to not leave them. I think even if it's a secular marriage, like we treat it as like it's a sacred vow, right.
Yeah, in some sense. I guess here's maybe how I would see it, right? You're probably making some level of commitment to your partner,
Yeah.
right? And maybe you think that marriage is more of a commitment than what you're willing to like what level of commitment you're willing to make, right? And part of that might be that you think that I don't know. Well,
I think to me it's like that. I'm at a certain level of commitment right now, for example, and like I could commit more maybe, but to me, marriage feels like committing at like 100%.
Yeah, but I think maybe 100% is not a little bit different than is like committing at 100% is not like a mental compulsion, right? But I do think that it's certainly maybe the most that you can commit feasibly, right?
Well, I said I feel like marriage is about we're committing 100%.
Yeah.
Not 99.9%.
Yeah.
Right,
But,
and when you go to on your wedding day, you're like, I am committing 100%.
Yeah, for
not
sure.
99.
Yeah. But what does 100% mean?
Yeah.
Right. 100% is not like a mental compulsion where you can never get divorced, right? but obviously divorce is like very, 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 very much like a last resort, right?
Yeah.
At that point.
I guess to me, like if I don't want to make a commitment that feels dishonest to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm making a commitment saying I'm doing 100%,
Mm-hmm.
but I know in the back of my head, like, well, it's not really
Mm-hmm.
100%. Like, like it's, if some shit happens, like we could get to, like, it's not really 100%.
Well, I guess
that to me feels dishonest.
Here's the question. What level of commitment do you think the legal institution of marriage is?
Yeah.
Just like...
Was it, to me, so in my head, I separate the legal institution from the, like, mental, like, emotional commitment that you make to the person.
Right, okay.
Because the legal one, like, the government is like, you can divorce, like, we don't just pay, you gotta, there's, like, a process, right? But, like, we will let it happen. So to me, the legal marriage is not 100% commitment. To me, it's the part that I struggle with is not legally getting married, but the commitment you make to the other person.
Right. Well, as long as your level of commitment is higher than the legal requirements, you can get married, though.
But I feel like the legal requirement is like they don't really give a shit.
Well, there's some level of commitment, right?
Is there?
Well, I mean, it's
Like,
expensive to divorce, right? Like, that's the whole point of, like...
Yeah.
Right? You have to, like, lose half your assets and get into a big court fight over, like, who gets what. And it's a big hassle, like...
So you think if I'm willing to commit to legal marriage and, like my commitment, like, the amount of commitment I feel is stronger than what the government asked for me. I'm like, I think it would be worth it to get married to this person and risk divorce. Like, I think that would be a net gain for me.
Yeah, and then you can define your...
I should do it.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not committing to 100% with the person.
Right, because, like, we all define 100% differently, right? And you can, like, you can have your own level of marriage and, your own level. You can get married however you like, right? And you can have your own oaths or whatever, right? Like, there's different traditions and,
Yes, yeah.
So you can pick the level that's comfortable for you. Obviously, if your level of commitment is lower than the legal requirement, then you probably shouldn't get married.
You shouldn't get married.
Right. But if it's over, then, you know, like, if you think a certain marriage ceremony requires you to give, like, 100%, you're not ready for that, but you're ready for 95%, and the legal requirement's, like, whatever, 75, 85, I don't know.
Yeah, just random numbers. But
then do a marriage ceremony that's 95 commitment.
Yeah. I guess so, yeah.
Right? Like...
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's better if you can do 100% or however much, whatever.
I don't trust 100%.
Yeah, I think it's also like it's 100% of like what's reasonably feasible, right? Not 100% of like, you're mind controlling yourself or something. I don't know.
Listen, I feel like if I'm saying the words of 100% to the person I'm marrying, then I should like effectively mind control myself to be responsible about it. Or else like I'm kind of lying if I'm not willing to like mind control myself to make sure that it happens. Because to me, that's what 100% means. It means like I'm going to mind control myself to like make it, to not get divorced from you.
So I think on that side, like, I think one of the things I've learned about what's different between school and real life afterwards is that in real life, you can't be perfect.
Exactly.
Right? So like there is no 100%.
Yeah, exactly. What's right? Yeah. So I'm like, how can... But people are making the 100%, they're saying 100% to each other. They have a whole ceremony and they're like, I'm 100% not going to leave you.
I guess what I'm saying is that the scale is not, it doesn't end at 100%. Like, it could go beyond 100%. It could be like 200% commitment or 300% commitment.
Oh.
And 100% might be like, the most reasonable, feasible level of commitment.
Yeah.
Not, maybe like mind control is 200%.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not sure, maybe the way that you're seeing the marriage ceremony is more commitment than it actually is.
Well, like, to me, I'm thinking of like the words "till death do us part." Right. If I'm making commitment that I'm going to be with this person till death do us part, that's what I'm defining as 100%.
Yeah, but I think we often say things and make plans for things that we don't follow through on.
I don't.
Right?
Well, I don't. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
that's,
But I mean, obviously, there's different levels of intention, right?
Yeah.
For that, right? Like if you're just making friends, plans with a friend, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, we'll have lunch, on the weekend, and then you can cancel pretty easily, right? In this, like you're saying, like an intention, like a plan, right? And obviously, and you can put however much commitment into that as you want, right? And I think for most people, I think they fully intend to commit.
Yeah.
They think that they're not going to break it, right? And
Yeah.
and but I feel like if you think, oh, obviously, reality is that some people get divorced, and there's always a risk of that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna do everything in my power that doesn't happen. But
Yeah.
if something happens, then who knows? I think that's the most that you can expect out of someone, right? I think you can't expect perfection, like
Yeah.
right. And I feel like that's enough to be married to someone over, right? Or that's enough to get married over. I don't know.
I guess so.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe you just
The
have
government seems to think so.
Yeah.
So they're fine with that.
Maybe you just have too high expectations of yourself. Right? Maybe
I do. Is that like if I'm
Yeah.
gonna say till death do us part, like to me I'm like I better mean that.
Yeah, but didn't you wasn't the key to happiness low expectations? Like wasn't
And
wasn't
that's why I can't align these two things, right? Is that I can't like if I'm saying till death do us part, I'm expecting a lot from myself, right? And I
Right.
wouldn't. To me, that's like the opposite of the key to happiness, because the key to happiness is to not have those expectations of myself. And that's to me the fundamental, like I can't deal with that. Like the problem is that how do I fix like not having expectations of myself with I'm expecting myself to never leave this person.
I think it's like I don't know. I think it's just important to be reasonable, right? Like I don't think we can expect perfection, right? And I think, expecting that you're going to make a good effort, a good faith effort is that's as much as we can do, right?
Yeah.
And
I guess we'll see if my partner's happy about that when I talk to her.
yeah.
Say,
you could have
I
her
talked
listen to this episode and
I talked to Bohan and he said that what I should tell you when we get married on our wedding day is I'm going to make the best effort I can to not leave you, but like no guarantees.
I don't know.
I feel like most people are not okay with saying that
obviously,
on
I
their
think
wedding day. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like that's a
You know?
I feel like
I've
that's
never
what,
seen that.
I feel like that's what implicitly everybody says, but not
Yeah.
but not what implicitly everybody says, right?
Yeah.
Like
It's not
no central
that.
bank is like, oh, we're gonna, our inflation target's between 2 and 3%, but sometimes it's not between 2 and 3%, right? Like
I don't like-
that's
I don't
not
like
that's
this
not
line.
you
What?
that's not how you say
I
something.
don't want to lie on my wedding day.
Right,
That
you
doesn't
don't-
feel right to me. I don't know.
You don't sign a contract to your
Okay.
to your to let's say the I don't know, like your phone company.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, I'm gonna pay you, $35 a month.
Yeah.
Every month, but unless something happens and then I
Yeah.
can't pay you $35 a month, right? Like that's you don't say that, right? You just like sign the contract that says
But I think in the contract it explicitly says what happens if you don't pay. Like
that's that's in your contract too. I mean, there's like implicitly like the the legal state. You don't have to say it because the law's there.
Yeah, like for divorce.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
yeah, and and there's some social norms as well, right?
Yeah.
But like
No, but like with a phone contract, okay?
yeah,
Like they know I can just leave. Like that's in when I sign it, I'm signing it with the idea that like I'm just gonna leave it.
yeah, but that's not what it says on the paper.
Okay.
That's not what it says on the paper, right? The paper says you're gonna pay X per month for
Yeah.
2 years, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't say well unless you really can't make it and then you have to default on this contract, right? That's not in the contract, right? I think it's implied, right? But that like you might have to break the contract, but if you say it out loud, like, they're gonna look at you funny, right? They're gonna be like, wait, why? I don't know if you're actually like making this commitment, right?
And to me, that's not really a commitment. Like a phone contract's not like that's not a commitment.
I think the phone company thinks differently. I mean, yeah. But I don't know. I feel like it says something a little bit different if you say it explicit, like, you know. I think she's gonna interpret it differently if you say it explicitly.
I feel like most
Yeah.
I think most of the us go to our weddings and we're like, hey, like I'm gonna try my best.
Yeah. But I think reasonably, yeah, I think that's implicitly.
You think that's implicit?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, otherwise, things get very complicated whenever you have to enter a contract or anything like that. Right? If for example, like, if you let's say put some money down on something, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna like come back and like,
yeah,
oh, I'm gonna buy this thing, but I need to run across the street and like get some money.
Yeah.
I'll be back, right? You don't say, oh, unless I get hit by a car, in which case I'm gonna not be able to come back and buy this thing, in 2 minutes, right? You just say, oh, I'm gonna be back in 10 minutes.
Well, I think to me, like, at least the way I understand marriage is that the difference to me is that, like, well, no, so to me, the way I understand marriage is that, like, the commitment that normal people, the thing that you say is that, like, unless I die, is that I'm gonna do this. Unless I die, then that's my only out.
Well, I think it's a contract for life, right? That's the duration of the contract.
That's the duration.
Yeah, it doesn't expire. Yeah, it's not like a 2-year phone contract. It's a
okay.
It's a contract in perpetuity until you die.
Yeah. But there's still outs built in, implicit outs.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's just life,
Exactly.
Yeah, but you don't say it, right? And you I think if you say it, it sounds like you intend to use it.
Yeah.
Right. So and do you intend to use it?
Well, not if I'm entering into this contract.
Yeah.
No, but with a phone contract, normally I am intending to use it.
Wait, really? Like, can you actually break a phone contract early? I just bring my own phone, so.
Yeah, well, like, often they'll have, like, a penalty. They'll be like, oh, if you leave this early, we're going to charge you this penalty. And so when I'm looking for a new phone plan that's cheaper, I check if, like, the discount per month is going to be cheaper than, like, the penalty I'm going to have to pay to leave the phone contract. I'm totally intending to leave as soon as I find one that is cheaper. Like, let's say prices have gone down, like, in a year. But the penalty's $100, but I'm going to save, like, I don't know, like $10 a month, right? And they're gonna charge me $100 to break it. I'm like, oh well, if I had to do this for a year,
right,
I'd actually lose $120 a month, right. So then I'm gonna do it, and when I sign the contract, I'm thinking about this,
right. But if you apply the same logic to a partnership, or marriage, right. So if you're not married, that penalty for breaking, the partnership is very low.
Yeah.
Right. So in the back of your head, you're always thinking, oh, it's only $100.
Yeah.
To get out of this, right?
Yeah.
So, wouldn't you want to, like, if you really think that the partnership is great and you want it to continue and you want to be able to invest in it, don't you want a really high penalty? Don't you want it to be like a ton of hassle and maybe half your assets and like,
this is what we were saying.
A lot of social sanctions and those things.
So the point of marriage is so that way it forces you to invest in it.
Yes.
Which I guess comes back to what you were saying at the start of this discussion, kind of.
Yes.
Which is that, like, you're going to make it really hard to not be in this marriage.
Yes.
So that way you can get the benefits of this marriage.
Yes.
Basically.
Exactly.
Because there are benefits to being in the marriage.
Yes.
But the only benefits only really work if, like, the penalty to leaving is high enough so that nobody leaves. And you
nobody, but like,
you feel more secure that
exactly.
Like, no one's gonna leave because there's a penalty to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're like betting that.
Well, it's not a bet. It's not a bet, right? It's a commitment, right? You're gonna work towards it, right? A bet is like you can't influence it very much. Right, a commitment is that you're gonna change your behaviors to make it work, right?
Yeah. So,
yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how I see it, and how it's kind of worked out for me. So, hopefully, yeah. So.
I don't know if I have all my answers, but I have some new thoughts.
Yeah.
That I think I will.
Okay. But
So-
I mean, everybody's different, right? Like if you're in your relationship with your partner is
Yeah.
that's not what you want, then that's you do you, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm just trying to
Listen,
explain
to me,
what
it's not about my relationship. It's about the whole concept. That's
it's the
where
whole concept. Okay.
That's where I'm stuck.
Right. Right.
It's just marriage itself, and that's where I've been stuck for like a long time. And then,
I don't know. It's just kind of nice, and I think well, I think one thing to say is that if you look at, I think there's been some research, and maybe I'm not super familiar with this literature, but it's like I think there's some research that shows that in terms of like happiness, it's like people who are married are happier than people who are single, who are happier than people in like bad marriages, right? So people in good marriages are happier, but then like you don't want to be in bad marriage, right? So I think it's important that you are you're kind of in a relationship that's good and that works. And I think if we're talking about dating advice or whatever, right, I think something that people miss is that you're gonna have to spend the rest of your life with that person, right? Ideally, if that's that if it works out, right? And that's sort of the best case scenario perhaps for many people, right?
This is something I wanted to ask you more about too.
Yeah.
So like, you've convinced me that there are upsides to marriage and that I should enter into a contract with
to
negative
ensure your
penalties
income.
to ensure my income and increase my net happiness.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, you know what, Bohan, you're an economist, you sold me.
Yeah.
Good economic decision for my life.
Yes.
But then like how do you know that this person's how do you know this is the person you should enter a contract with?
Gosh, I don't know. Like
How do you
know?
Yeah,
I don't
you just kind of know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, like
because you said that a bad marriage is worse than a good marriage. So I gotta be, if I'm entering into this contract, I gotta be careful to make sure that it is a good contract that I'm signing.
I have no idea. I can't. I think I've been fortunate. Well, I haven't been in a lot of relationships at all. So, but I've been fortunate enough that I haven't been in a bad relationship. So I don't know what it looks like. So I don't know if I can help you out with that.
Do you have advice on how to get into a good one? Then.
I think.
Or like,
okay.
what did that look like?
Okay, so here's my thoughts on dating, maybe, and maybe this will help.
Yeah.
Right. So. This is again pretty nerdy economics ideas, right? It's like, okay, think of yourself as having
can nerd
like
it down a little bit.
Yeah. So
Keep
think
the
of
core concepts.
Yeah. So let's say you have a number, right? Like some number between between anything, right?
We got a number between 1 and 10. Okay. Is that good? That doesn't work.
Maybe like 1 in 1,000.
Okay, we got a number between 1 and 1,000. Okay.
Yeah, maybe it wraps, but like okay, and so like let's say you're compatibility with somebody, everybody has a number, right? And let's say your compatibility with somebody is like based on the distance between your numbers plus like some sort of like innate personal qualities and their personal qualities, right? Like some people are more agreeable and more compatible maybe and more willing to like work with other people, and some people are maybe a bit more individualistic, and maybe they have some narrower taste for who they want as a partner, right? And so the thing is, like, there's sort of two strategies that you can have to like improve the quality of your match.
Okay.
Right. One is or increase the chances that you find a good match.
Yeah.
Right. One is you can work on that sort of like personal side, like your ability to work well with other people.
Right.
Right. So that'll help you match with more people, and also probably you'll have a stronger match with somebody who's really compatible with you because maybe you just.
Yeah, you're just better at teamwork.
Yeah, you're just better at teamwork and working through stuff.
So if it's less compatible of a match, you'll work better, and if it is better, then you'll work even better.
Exactly.
Together.
And then the other thing is maybe the distance between your numbers.
Okay.
Right. So that unfortunately you just have to like do a lot of trials.
Yeah.
Right. And you just have to like kind of be willing to like, have a bad day and kind of, it's kind of sucky.
I think this is something important.
Yeah.
For dating, that I think for me, this was like advice I needed to hear at one point, that like bad dates are actually good.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because the worst thing that can happen is you get stuck in a bad relationship.
Yeah.
Right. So the best thing that can happen is you can like, you draw that random ball from the hat. Right.
Yeah.
and you're like, oh shoot, this number isn't anywhere close, and then
Yeah.
you can just put it back and try for another draw
Yeah.
in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Now I have to say that I got pretty lucky that I haven't had had to do that a lot, so I don't know how good this advice is applicable in general, but
Well, no, I do think that is good advice, because for me that's worked really well, and I think like something for me that's made that advice work better is that like if the reason that bad dates are good is because we're trying to find somebody with a number close to mine. And I think when I first started dating, I was trying to be like very agreeable, and I was like, oh man, I hope she likes me. Right. And then I realized, but like, if the point is to like get rid of her if it's not a good number, right, and to find somebody that is a good number,
right?
Okay, like, look, if you like
you want to put your best foot forward, obviously, but yeah.
Well, to me, it's not about putting you like necessarily like your best foot. It's like like it's about putting yourself forward.
Yes.
More than about like like I wouldn't go on a date and try and be like very professional like I am at work.
Yeah.
Right. It's more about being me and showing who I am.
Yeah.
Right. So that way, like it's about making sure she knows what number I am.
Yes.
So that way, if my number is very different from hers, then she'll be like, "Oh fuck, what the fuck is that number?" Like,
yeah.
That's not who is this guy.
Right.
Right. Rather than so to me, it's more about it's more focused on my number than about like my agreeableness in general, or like how good my teamwork is, at least for the start. So that way you can filter out people that are not gonna match with you.
And I think the other thing that maybe was helpful for me in the background, even though I didn't have to do as much of it, was that it's okay to kind of have a bad date, right? It's not like some personal failing if
100%.
yeah, right. Yeah. And maybe that sort of takes some of the pressure off. And because there is a lot of pressure on us guys, right? So like it's because it tends to be like, oh, we have to be the one to ask them out on a date, right? And that's kind of, I found that really scary. That was terrifying. But I think it's more like,
I think also just it's hard to get dates too, so you feel like it should be successful because you're not getting that many.
Right. Yeah.
As a guy.
But if it's kind of that view of like, hey, and maybe it also kind of lowers that commitment of the first one, like the importance of the first one, where it's like, hey, if you just go for a coffee and just talk to each other and see if you guys are vibing or not, then the worst thing that can happen is, oh, you're completely different and there's no vibe at all.
Yeah.
You had a coffee and it's a bummer, right? It's a disappointment, right? It's obviously not the best, but you're not losing that much, right?
Yeah.
And then the upside is like, there's a lot of potential upside, right? Yeah. So it's like, I think seeing it that way kind of let me, because I didn't date very much at all, like until I was, I guess, it's like late 20s. Yeah. At least, when I started dating. So like it, I think that was what kind of let me be a bit more, to find it less intimidating. And actually, ask my now wife out. So
yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
No, that makes that makes sense to me too. And that, I think I must see there's actually an upside to a bad date is that you're not going to get into a bad relationship.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So actually bad dates are a good thing because being in a bad relationship is worse than being single. Exactly. That's what the studies say.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's good to have, I guess, I think if you're not having bad dates and you're, going on a bunch of dates, that's actually probably not a good sign.
Or maybe you're just like super compatible with everybody. I don't know.
I don't think anyone's that, right? Like, I don't think anyone can be that compatible with everyone. Right?
Probably not. I mean, maybe. I don't
know. Because like, there's going to be some people that don't like you.
Yeah, I guess.
Right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But, yeah.
Like, to me, if you're being that agreeable, you're not really being yourself. Right? And then, like, in the long term, you're going to find out that, like, this person doesn't like the real you. That's the problem with only having good dates.
Right. Maybe.
So.
Although I feel like if you only have good dates, you're probably not going to be on, dating for very long. Right? Well, you're not going to be on the, like, dating circuit for that long, right? You'll probably, like, find someone who...
That's true.
You like and then, partner up. But,
Yeah.
So.
That's true. I guess I'll ask too then about like getting the courage to ask your wife out.
Yeah, I think.
And like it sounds like you're putting less expectations on yourself, like being like it's okay if it's a bad date helped, but is there more to working up to that?
As far as that, not really. I think that was just like I think originally like as a guy, it's like there's all these like you hear about you don't want to be a creep, right?
Yeah.
And and I guess it's a problem because it's like there's sort of no guide for the middle ground, right? There's like the people who are like completely oblivious and they're like creeps, and then there's the guys who are like scared, right? And it's like it's hard to find balance, right? It's easy to like it's like bowling, it's easy to get into the gutter. Sometimes it's hard to like go down the middle. So for the longest time I was just like, well, if I screw up, this is gonna impact another person, right? It's like I'm gonna potentially
I'm gonna be a creep, basically.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a creep.
Not like me, and like it's
gonna be for myself, and also I'm I don't want to hurt I don't want to harm another person, right? Like in some way, even and and I don't want to be subject to ridicule or whatever, or like and I think that was like most of it, and it was just like, oh, I just don't. There's not a lot of good strategy guys, right? Like I played a lot of games, right? So you can look up the strategy guides for like how to play these games or whatever, and like Build Orders and StarCraft or whatever, right? And it's like, there's not a lot of like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of like, here's what you do, right? And obviously it's a very fluid situation, so it's just like, well, I don't want to risk it, and it's scary. But I think kind of just like over time, kind of like thinking about this and kind of seeing in that light, it was like, okay, you know what? Like the first one, all it is like I'm taking them to coffee, right? And that's kind of what how we went on our first date, and we just chatted, and it was lovely conversation, and we just vibed and hit it off, and then I had to go and like proctor an exam, and so we drove back, and afterwards I was like, oh yeah, that was really lovely, and then it can be as little as that, right? And if it didn't work well, it's like, oh well, we got coffee, and then we said goodbye, and that's it, right? It's a coffee, right? So I don't know. I think just having like slightly lower expectations, like going back to expectations, right? Being like, the stakes aren't that high, and it can be kind of chill, and just see how it goes, right?
Did you like deal with the I don't want to be a creep thing in there, or just?
I think I developed better social skills over time as well.
Okay. Because I think part of it's just practice.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I think maybe that was part of it. Like I didn't. I probably didn't have the best social skills as a teenager or in my early 20s, and I think I knew it perhaps, so maybe that was part of it too. But yeah, maybe. So, but I think by the time that happened, I was like, okay, you know what? It's like, look, I'm just gonna, ask them to go on a date. I'm gonna be very clear. I think, by the way, this I feel very strongly about. Like, if you ask somebody on a date, like, tell them it's a date. Right? Otherwise, it's very confusing. Yeah, it's very, very confusing. They don't know what's going on. This, at least, then, is intentional. It's a date. And then, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, right? As opposed to, like, this weird limbo thing.
So, I agree.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, ask them on a date. If they say no, they say no, right? It's like,
I think that's part of it, actually, is that I think when you're, as a guy, when you're not clear that it's a date, but you think it's a date, that actually makes it more creepy.
Yeah.
But if you just say, hey, I'm asking you out on a date.
Yeah.
And then she can say yes or no.
Yeah.
Then if she says no and you walk away, then you're not a creep. Like it's you solved the problem.
Right.
For yourself. Because I think the creep is when it's like you're a creep when it's like she doesn't know what's going on, she's confused, you're kind of trying to get something out of it, but like it's like you're in that when you're in that weird limbo, that's when it gets creepy. So you can just say, hey, I'm asking you on a date, yes, no, done, like right to the point.
Exactly. Or if you're like infatuated with her,
Yeah.
right? You're like following her around in class, and
Yeah.
right? But then she's like, what's going on? Like, right?
Yeah, but then you say, "Oh, can we get coffee?" And you're infatuated with her.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
and you go to
yeah,
coffee,
yeah.
and you're like, "Oh man, I'm on a date with her. Oh man, this is so great." But like, she doesn't know that.
Right.
I think that's when it gets weird.
That gets weird. Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So here, I'll give you a script, guys. Okay, like if you don't know how to do this, you could be like, okay, you could say, look, I think you're cute, or whatever you want to say. I think you're beautiful. Would you like to go on a date with me? Let's maybe we can meet up at this coffee place or whatever. Or it doesn't have to be coffee. It can be just like something.
Yeah.
I
like bubble tea for first dates.
Bubble tea is good. Yeah.
I think I would change the script a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
For the if just to keep it as like as similar as possible, I'd say I'd like to take you on a date, or like I'd like to go on a date with you.
Yeah, you can
right?
lead it off with
to
a
me
compliment.
that makes it feel a little bit more. Yeah, sorry. Like I'd say like, yeah, hey, I think you're really cute. I'd like to get some bubble. Like I'd like to go on a date and get some bubble tea with you.
Yeah, that's
right.
Good.
And to me, it feels more like a little more assertive, a little bit more like I want you.
Yeah.
I guess because you do want to communicate. I feel like it's important to communicate that as part of it, rather than like, do you want to go with me? Saying like, I want you. Right. And like making that clear. I feel like I think to me, putting yourself out there a little bit more like that actually makes you a little bit more attractive.
I think so.
As well. Right.
I agree. Yeah.
So.
And then apparently research shows that if you're in some place like a little bit thrilling, then that's builds a better like attractiveness in the first.
Is?
Yeah.
Like if you're outside somewhere,
or if you're like like going across like riding a roller coaster or something. I don't know what some other examples are. Well, we didn't really do that. But, but that could
well,
be
I think
like
to me then it starts getting like it's high expectation. It's high.
Yeah.
You start expecting a lot from yourself.
Yeah, but like you could do that as like a second date, or maybe like it's sort of like a combination date, right? Where it's like, oh, we're gonna have coffee, and then if it's going well, you could be like, oh, would you like to actually also go on a hike, right?
This is what I've done.
Yeah.
Is that I start with coffee or bubble tea.
Yeah.
And it's very easy and very like like low effort, and it's very easy to just leave.
Exactly.
Very easy to come up with an excuse. It's also easy for her to come up with an excuse.
Yeah.
And leave, and then if it's going well, you can always transition it into something else.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And then, and obviously, if it's not going well, if either of you is not going well, they could be like, well, I'm busy, I got sorry, I can't do it, right?
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
I think the most important thing though for this type of dating advice is that you can't be too invested, right? Like if the date doesn't work out like you hoped, you have to be able to walk away graciously, right?
Yeah.
Say, hey, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And then, you
just like bad dates are useful, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you don't want to be stuck in that.
You don't want to be stuck in a bad date.
Yeah.
You don't want to be stuck in a bad date.
I'm saying bad marriage too.
Yeah.
Right? Like
you don't want to be stuck in a bad relationship, right?
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't get to the point of marriage,
Sure,
right? You could probably waste many years in a bad relationship, right?
Yeah, well, that's harder to get out of. Too,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So.
Yeah,
I think for me, just kind of realizing that it doesn't have to be, so high stress.
Yeah.
And it's okay if it doesn't work out. I think that let me come across.
So I say it's good if it doesn't work out. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so then it was like, okay, I mean, obviously it's better if it works out, right?
Yes, yeah. But it's also good.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out.
Yeah. So I think that was what let me kind of.
Yeah.
Have that confidence to ask my wife out. So,
yeah. I'm glad it worked.
Yeah.
Glad you asked
Me too. Me too. So
now you have economic security. Fantastic.
Yeah. And love. Don't forget
insurance.
love. Yeah. It's the error term, but it's the most important part. It's the most important.
We didn't talk about that, Bohan. My understanding is that it is purely an economic. Okay, that's what
right. Yeah. No. Yeah. So sometimes it's pretty funny, but even when it's pretty funny, you can still have some interesting insights, right?
No, that's true. Yeah. I think this has been good so far.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to talk about, or?
I think that's it for today, Bohan.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. Anything you're looking forward to, like as far as let's say books or movies?
I think you're asking me because you're looking forward to something and you want to show it.
Am I looking forward to something? I'm actually not that looking forward to something. Yeah. I don't know. You should talk about maybe you should talk about like pop culture stuff in these podcasts. Or maybe that's not your podcast.
No.
No, okay, all right. You should leave this in the podcast.
No, I think the Zoomers have enough pop culture
Okay,
these days. I think they need wisdom.
all right. Wisdom, all wisdom, no fun, no pop culture. Only
I
the
think-
the nerdiest of economics examples.
This is correct.
Yeah,
Only
yeah.
nerdy economic examples. I think that's the best way to communicate.
Yeah,
Wisdom,
exactly.
So-
This is.
Well,
all
that's
your
where the
podcast's
fun
gonna be.
is.
Yeah.
right? Is we're like, I know wisdom is it's such a boring, heavy topic, so
Yeah.
we're gonna make it more fun by talking about interest rates in the central bank. That's how we're
Exactly.
gonna spice it up.
Exactly.
So-
Who needs philosophy when you can have economics?
Exactly.
That's gonna be what gets me canceled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Anyway, all right. Thank you, Bohan.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's fun.